Hi, I'm Adele. I'm a trauma and relationship counselor with Naked Divorce and Naked Recovery. So in today's video, I want to talk about being a lapper. So a lapper is somebody that never quite finishes a relationship without overlapping over another relationship. So it's almost like every time a relationship's ending, there's already something available in the wings so that we have a kind of hedge and we're ready to move to the next relationship. And there's this constant overlapping. Now, it doesn't always mean that the person that is a lapper is cheating, but they're definitely aware of options that are open before they leap out of the one thing to the next thing. Now, if you are a person that does it, there's some dangers of doing that. And I've seen this pattern quite a lot in, clients that I've worked with and situations that we see, within coaching. Some of the challenges are, like, first things first is you constantly overlapping. Sometimes you'll be in a relationship and you'll see, okay, there's like two things that I need that are missing in this person. And then something else comes along and you're like, oh, those things that I need are here. And what you're doing is you're doing due diligence, but just on the delta. You're looking at two things are missing. It's present here, hooray. And we've leapt now into this new thing where this thing that was missing is now present. But we haven't necessarily looked at due diligence of the rest of the system. Like, actually, are all my other needs going to get met? Did I even check that? Or was I just looking at the delta of what was missing here and then left here? That I see often. So, when, your grandmother used to say, be careful because you're going to leap from the frying pan into the fire. This does happen a lot when you're a lapper and you find yourself constantly in these very dramatic situations where you've leapt from one situation into another situation that was potentially overall worse for you in the long run. The next thing that is tricky is that you're just never satisfied. Like, there's no feeling of like, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay on my own. If you're constantly moving from one to the next, you don't get that feeling that you're going to be okay on your own because you've not spent any time on your own. So you're never quite satisfied. And you've never actually done the work to check, well, what are all my parts as a person within my psyche that participate in my universe, in my life, in my psyche, in my brain? What do those parts need? The person that I'm in a relationship with, are they able to meet all the needs of all the parts? If we've never done that analysis, what ends up happening is we're just doing this kind of delta due diligence where we just do the shortcut. And we also, mainly our focus is, do you like me? Am I the person that you want to be with? We're not actually checking, are you somebody that can meet my needs? You probably have no idea what your needs are. You haven't slowed down enough to figure out, well, what is it that I need that would make me happy in a relationship? The next thing is, by doing this kind of pattern, you repeat patterns within your relationships. You end up finding yourself in the same kind of situation over and over again because you're attracted to drama and you do shortcuts in your due diligence when you're seeking and finding a partner. And there's this kind of, oh dear, and it's like a repeated pattern of disappointment and never meeting the person that is going to fully satisfy all your needs, all your parts. It's also quite emotionally exhausting when you never end a relationship and have the time to process and properly grieve what has happened. And I don't believe that stuff necessarily takes time, but it is a function of going through certain steps and motions. And if you don't go through that properly, there's a gap in your processing. So you never fully move on and you move from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And there's that real quality of emotional exhaustion. In one of the programs we're working where we have burnout, often find that burnout is occurring with people that have this lapper tendency, never quite finish things properly before moving into the next thing, and they just are unprocessed in their relationships. Obviously, dependency, the feeling of like, I can't ever be on my own, the fear of being on your own. And the fear of being on your own also stops people doing proper due diligence, because they almost they'll reverse engineer something, or they'll make something fit. They'll be like, well, I know that communication is really important to me, and he communicates, quite well. There's some issues there, but it's cool. We're going to do a class. It's going to be fine. Like, it's almost like we've leapt to, it's going to be fine. Like, we don't need to look at that. We can just skip all of that stuff, because we don't want to face the truth. Because we'd rather just tell ourselves everything's going to be okay and just extrapolate that the due diligence has been done, than to face, well, actually there's a communication challenge. That is a really important need of mine that needs meeting. I'm not going to flick across to the end of this and imagine everything's wonderful. I'm actually going to pause and ask difficult questions and go through that process. We don't do that when we're in this dependency cycle, because we just can't handle being on our own. Next thing is obviously a lack of clarity, because your focus is so much on them liking you and closing the deal and getting into the relationship, and not being alone. You actually don't have that clarity to know, well, who am I? And what is it that I need? And what kind of person would actually ultimately meet those needs and make me happy? What are the qualities of somebody that I want to be in a relationship with? Not just, what do they do for a living? And well, we're in the same religion, or we're in the same book club, or we have the same politics. That stuff actually doesn't count when it comes to due diligence. There's a whole series of other stuff that I find going through, thousands of divorce cases. Like, there's stuff that really makes a difference. And by not looking at those character traits, those are the biggest predictors of divorce long term. So in our due diligence process, we're paying attention to the wrong things because we're not actually in tune with our needs. Because there's this, just focus on getting into the next relationship. So we don't have that clarity, which is really crucial. I think the final thing of, the tricks of being a lapper is just you've missed really important growth opportunities. There's something really special and beautiful that I see over and over again working in the field of trauma, that people that really meet their trauma in that kind of place of darkness and scariness, they understand that ultimately you don't need to fear your emotions. Your emotions are there to teach you. And healing is a learning journey. And if we learn what we need to learn from those emotions, they discharge. They need to see that we've got the lesson and we've incorporated that lesson somehow into our lives by changing something or changing tack or approach or whatever. And if our emotion sees that it's done that, it's a bit like a ghost that has said what it needs to say and now it can leave. Like, it needs to do that so that it can actually move on. And you don't need to fear your emotions. They're really a signal to us about whether our needs are being met or not met. And by paying attention and listening to them, we have that growth opportunity. And the process is really crucial when you're getting into a relationship. You need to have processed your previous relationship, figured out what went wrong, what are the learnings there, like what did I step over, where was I perhaps too tolerant or intolerant, or what are the takeaways, what do I need to get from that, what do I need to learn from that. Then you integrate, like, what are the changes I'm going to make moving forward. And then I start to map out what are my parts or personas and what do they need. And by figuring out what I need, now my process in dating and moving forward is to conduct that due diligence. And when something starts to go wrong, is don't try to still make the thing fit. Pay attention to that data. If there's something you've written down in your due diligence that's important to you, and you step over that, well, then it's on you. If somebody shows you who they really are and you don't want to see that, because you kind of don't want to be alone, or you just want to stay dependent and you're in the cycle. The key with due diligence is to have the courage to, if you're in something and it's not working, is to walk away, or to address it and speak up and advocate for your needs getting met. And if you don't have the courage to do that, you are constantly risking being in the same repeated patterns over and over again, and probably going to end up with a lot of breakups and divorce. So I hope this kind of makes sense. But if you find yourself in this constant cycle of being a lapper, take the time out to process what has happened, find out what it is that you need, tune into that, and go through this process of due diligence, and you'll find that your next relationship might go better. Hope that's helpful.